One of the essential ingredients in a spiritual life is the human ingredient. And it's often overlooked because somehow the journey for many of us is to become something more than or other than human. We are all trying to perfect something, to arrive at a place where our human frailties and fallibilities and discomforts and dramas and narrative are somehow perfected, that we can become, in being perfect, something beyond human. And of course, a lot of people talk about becoming spiritual, meaning that you have devoted your life to the spirit that you are, or the deeper underlying non-dual truth of your being, in conflict with or in reference to or in dialogue with this human aspect. With the sense being that somehow there is a journey into the transcendent which leaves the human behind. And there's a problem with that, because for most of us, the human is on the journey. It travels with us. It goes along with whatever else is happening, with however transcendent we may be, no matter how non-dual we may be, however vast our being and awareness may be, there is, as long as we are embodied at all, a person. And that person is often at odds with the being. In other words, it doesn't quite measure up. It doesn't arrive at that perfection, which we imagine certain people to have arrived at, and they may have. There are some great souls on this planet who appear from the outside to have done it. Whatever done it means, it's a kind of like, they don't suffer. They're in endless bliss. There is no stress. There is no human limitation as such. But my Aunt Esther used to always say, if you want to really know someone, imagine them going to the bathroom. All of these great human souls that we know have diarrhea at times, constipation at times, even horrible stomach aches at times. In fact, Buddha died of stomach poisoning. I don't think, personally, that Buddha sat there, although they have him lying there, but I don't think he sat there going, this is nothing. I'm just aware of pain. This is beautiful. This is lovely. I think he was probably hurting in the same way that Jesus was hurting on the cross and feeling betrayed. In the same way that we human beings go through struggles and dramas and difficulties in our lives and do our best. We do our best to be human, not spiritual, human, in the everyday expression of our being. Being human is actually an amazing achievement. It fills us with something that is so extraordinarily real and beautiful and deep and affirming and completing. Being human is these simple acts of profound selfless action. I spent many, many years trying not to be human. I wanted essentially to be a superhero. I wanted, as a young kid, I would tie towels around my neck and jump off the porch railing. And for that 1/10 of a second that I was flying in the air, I felt this is who I want to be. As I got older and started realizing how hard life was and how difficult so many of the human situations are that we find ourselves in, I kind of wanted to be bigger than or freer than most people around me, because I saw a lot of people struggling. My parents struggled. My dad struggled financially a lot. I looked at the kids in high school, and the kids I talked to, and everyone was putting on a face, but I knew they were having their hard times. Their life was not an easy journey for people. And when I first took my LSD trip in 1965, and I was shown that this human life was so small in comparison to the vastness of the endlessness of being, I finally got a perspective on it. But the weirdest thing happened. After I had this vast perspective on being, after I went through what appeared to be in my own inner being a kind of death, I ended up back here, in this body, still having to be a person. And I didn't know what to do with that. I really kind of wanted to be there. Not that I wanted to, but I realized once you know the there of the vastness of reality is part of your being, how can you want to live in this tiny little encapsulated person? How can you be happy in this little body that gets colds and flu and, and cancer and God knows what else? How can we live in this little space knowing that that bigness exists? And so I began this huge journey to escape my humanity and to be this vastness, this big, gigantic oneness of who I truly was. And I went off to India. I met my teacher Rudy back in America. I met all these great teachers and people who gave me ways of doing this thing I was thinking of. But they all boiled down to a certain kind of transformation of my human being into a spiritual being. If I sat and meditated every day, 20 minutes, 30 minutes a day, I suppose if I went on retreats for 30 days out of the year, or if I did periods of silence, if I tried all these different things, I would find my way out of the human condition into the higher reality of my existence. And in a sense, I did. In a sense, I kept rising into something greater every day. I would sit and meditate literally every morning. The first thing I did after brushing my teeth, before having breakfast, I would sit. And I would feel vast, open, expansive. And then I had to go to work or take the kids to school or go to the pool, swim, or whatever I had to do. And then there was traffic and there was stuff going on, and the human thing kept interfering with the spiritual thing. And I kept going, well, how do I get past this? How do I get past the human thing? And it's so interesting because after sitting for 44 years and this awakening took place, the awakening was that I wasn't Bruce, that I wasn't this individual separate self, but I did not awaken to the fact that I wasn't human. I just wasn't a singular, individualized, limited person. I was human. I was human being. I wasn't a human being. I was human being. And that we are all human being. We are endless in our being, but we experience it through and know it through our humanity. The human part of the equation not only didn't disappear, it expanded into an inclusiveness of everyone. And that is a very big experience. There was no longer a singular being, there was being itself. And it was unbelievably, almost unbearably human. It has wonderful aspects. There are moments of profound expansiveness, love, joy, bliss, knowing the unknown, being present, being alive, being filled with gratitude. There are these wonderful moments. And then there are moments, because they're part of the human condition, of being sad, of being doubtful, of being in pain, of being fearful. There are all these things that come, and I would keep thinking, well, how can I be spiritual and have these feelings? And the answer that kept coming back to me is you are spiritual because you're human. And humans have all of this. And what you get to do with it is to learn, to experience, to touch, to be at one with this. At the same time, you know something profound, that you are all there is. And at the center of that existence, of that oneness, of that vastness, is something that pulls you into a singularity that is able to say yes to totality. Yes. As a human being, there are days where finding that space becomes complicated, especially, interestingly, when you're not a particular person. When you're not the you that everybody's relating to and thinks that they know and thinks that they have a picture of. When you are just human, and these events start happening around you, there comes a point where you need to find a way of going yes, and that means withdrawing very, very deeply into yourself, into the still pointedness of your being, and finding refuge, if you will, finding totality, wholeness, the absolute. But it is only there for the moment. Of course, it imbues all moments. It is always present. But if you are really human, you will also be part of what we talked about last week, which is fluid reality. Reality is not just still pointed. It is not just freedom from being human. It is freedom to be completely human. And that's bigger than anything you've ever known as a person. It's bigger than anything you ever know as your own individual separate psyche. Suddenly you are all psyches, and you will feel everyone. You will feel everything. You will be in touch with the totality of being, and it is enormous. It is enormous. And what do you do in that extraordinary space of connectivity to all that is? The guiding emotional reaction to all that is the one that the Dalai Lama promotes every day, every time he speaks. But it is so real. It is compassion. This profound compassion for everyone and for this self that you are, which is everyone. I really kept hoping that my spiritual unfolding would relieve me of suffering. And certain kinds of suffering it has relieved me of. It's interesting to watch this unfolding taking place, because every day is different for me. Every day is an expansion. Every day is a new piece of information. One of my great favorite things used to be to turn on the TV and or watch a movie or go out, and now I walk out of movies. I cannot walk into the suffering at the magnitude that I often see of other people. I like comedy. I like the thing that makes me laugh, that makes me feel joy in life, but I feel so deeply into everything that's going on that even the tiniest little bit of suffering that I hear about just expands inside me, and the level of compassion is almost unbearably beautiful and sad and difficult and human. So those of you who are trying to go on this journey to escape the human condition, I can only tell you from my experience, and it may not be yours, but from my experience, you don't escape it, you become it. You are it. You are the human condition, and you are the unbearable compassion that goes along with that. You will feel for everyone. And then what do you do when you feel for everyone? You help. You reach out. You connect. You touch. You send love. You can send prayers. You can do whatever you can do. You will want to be there to help others through it, because they're no longer separate from you. They are you. The you that you want to help is everyone. The you that you are here to help is everyone. That's what we're doing. And it doesn't have to be a big deal. Went out to it's called a Dickens fair yesterday. It's like a Renaissance fair, but it's a very much enclosed, not unlike your wedding. But it was a very strange experience. It was wildly chaotic, and many people dressed in 1840s costumes and wanting to believe desperately that they were not in the 2000s at all, that they were of another time and period. They were speaking with British accents, some of them better than others. There were people walking around that clearly didn't want to be here. They wanted to be there, and they were believing it. I was walking around and I was being totally ignored because I wasn't in costume, and as were the rest of my family, Elijah and Talia and Josh and Evan and Blanche. We were all walking around, and the people who were in England of the 1840s were that's where they were. It was like a Bardo state. You know, we were all missing each other. We were not at all aligned. There were people living one life, people living another life. And Elijah said, I want to go home. I want to go home. He wanted out of there so bad. He could not figure this thing out at all. And I actually felt exactly the same way. But we had just gotten there and we just paid for this big thing. And so we're walking around in it, and I'm looking at everybody trying to be so hard to be other, to be somewhere else, to be at another time and place. And other people staring at all of that and wondering what was going on, and everybody just wanted to eat. And so we ended up eating. It was a 40-minute wait in line for Old English food, and we decided to get some Greek food. And we're sitting at these big, long tables, which are very friendly, and I was very happy to be at this big, long table, but I started eating this old gyro, and it was really good. It was dripping all over me, and the woman across the table from us just took a napkin and handed it to me. And I cannot tell you, but it was total transformation of the whole day. She changed everything. That little moment of seeing this food dripping down my face and my not having a napkin anywhere and having forgotten to get napkins, and she just went, my heart just burst open, and the whole day transformed. It just transformed because of the simple kindness of strangers. She was relating to me as family, as part of herself. She knew what I needed. She was there to meet the need. And the joy and the beauty of that simple connectedness is everything. I don't care how spiritual you are in your life. If you have an awareness that somebody needs a napkin and you provide that napkin, you have arrived at a state of godliness in my mind. It's a transcendent, beautiful state. It's just the simple human awareness of who we are with each other in each other's company. And at that moment, the whole day turned around, and I started falling in love with everyone in costume. I started taking everybody's pictures. They smiled, they posed, they were joyful. There was a sense that I was in two worlds at the same time. Elijah started to get happy. Everybody started to have a good afternoon. It was really kind of an exquisite transformation, and it had to do with nothing spiritual. It had everything to do with just being and accepting the reality, the strange reality, but reality of where we were. And it was really, really wonderful. I'm very empathetic with people on the spiritual journey. I understand the need to, in a way, get out of here. But I think the realization is there is no out of here. There is no out of here. There's only here. And it's a strange place on some level because it is wildly dualistic. There is good and evil. There is joy and sadness. There is doubt and belief. There is all of this stuff parading around all the time through all of us, and we all want to corral the one part of it that feels good. The part that's loving, that's simple, that's easy, that I can deal with, that, stay with my family, the smallness of our particular reality. But if you want a spiritual life, that's going to explode, and it's going to go into you are the total reality. You are all the stuff that's going on. You cannot separate yourself from it and be part of it. You cannot look to the spiritual to elevate yourself above it. You cannot be above what is. You can only be what is. And what is all there is. It's everything. It's good and bad, sweet and sour. It's got the totality in it. It's not separate from that, although there is this exquisite space, if you dig deep into yourself, that is, in a sense, liberated from all of what's going on, but it's not liberated really from it, it's liberated into it. You can be part of the totality because you are at a place where you're not at war with it, you're not hiding from it, you're not trying to be better than it or other than it, you are just it. And there is not even a singular being, there is just being. And as you go deeply, it's probably this one, as you go deeply, deeply into your being, it allows you to go out of your being and to integrate, embrace, enjoy every aspect of what is. Now, part of what will arise in all of that, and what I'm discovering now that I'm getting older, I would say old, but people say don't say that, as I get older, is the decomposition of our material self. And that is very discomforting. And if you're trying to look to spiritual aloofness to separate from it, good luck. Because reality is that you're going to fall apart, and you are going to watch yourself fall apart. You are going to watch the people around you fall apart. Your best friends are going to get sick. They are going to lose their eyesight. They're going to lose their hearing. They're going to lose their bowel functions. They are going to lose their battles with disease. All of this starts to happen in a very big way. And what's wanted here is some way to try to understand and be compassionate. But it is a big challenge. It's a big challenge. And if you really want to explore spiritual evolution, try meeting the challenge of getting old. Because it's more challenging than you imagine. The great teachers, Buddha, Christ, you name them, all left early. If you leave middle age, you don't have to deal with all of that stuff. You're just gone. But most of us who live longer have to deal with spiritual unfolding in a whole different way. And it is probably the biggest test of what you would call your spiritual life. How can I be human? How can I be human and deal with all of these things from a spiritual place? And the only way to do it is to be real with it. Be real with your sadness. Be real with your confusion. Be real with your sense of loss. Be real with the fact that everything you believed in and were holding on to is starting to erode. Allow all of this to happen and find that still pointedness in yourself that can go, even this, even this. And I talk about that a lot, and so does Hindu teaching. the even this quality, that everything, no matter what you're going through, no matter what the level of loss or the level of attainment or the level of fear and doubt, whatever it is that's going on inside you, you have to go, even this, even this. And so what you find is, if not exactly a pure equanimity, you find a way of going, oh, aso, okay, okay. And that, in many ways, may be the highest teaching there is. Just go, okay. I know people who get really angry. I know people who drink a lot. I know people who, do all sorts of things to escape the world that we're in. I would encourage us all to be kind to everybody making those choices because they don't have other techniques or facilities for dealing with what we're talking about. But one way or another, you have to find in yourself a way of saying yes to your own human failing. Not just your successes, not just your transformations, not just your transcendences, but your failings, your inabilities to trust everything, your inability to deal with the pain, your inability to recognize the stress and the failure and the conflicts that emerge as you age. All of these things have to happen. And what you learn after a life of spiritual practice is that in your humanity, you forgive yourself for being human. Your spiritual achievement is that you accept your human self. Not that you've gotten beyond it, not that you've sat in silence for 40 years. You learn to be human. Everybody used to joke, and I've told this 1,000 times, about the Zen monk who kills another Zen monk for stepping on his flower. That is not a condition you want to get to, where you have hidden your humanity in your spiritual aloofness. That you don't kill people for stepping on your flower. That your humanity prevents that. Your spirituality is a doorway to being, not to leaving. It is your doorway to arriving at yourself as you are, at who you are. And if you do that every day, if you really deeply accept your human self, you will find that the quote-unquote spiritual self will have been there watching, smiling. It embraces you. It says yes to this. Yes, yes, yes. Those are the big words. Yes, okay, even this. These are the governing words of a spiritual life. If you can find them, they will make you profoundly human, profoundly beyond your own individual self. You will find yourself arriving at an embrace of all there is to the degree that you can bear it. There is no out. There's only in. In is the inclusion of all there is. Out is not possible. If you are infinite and eternal, which I believe you are, how do you get out of that? Being human is the best way to embrace it all. So, forgive yourself for being human and allow it to be the doorway to everything you're looking for. Thank you. Any comments, criticisms, concerns? Okay, go for it. Either one.
I was just going to say, I'm glad you got the recording working because I've been thinking about this all week, meditating, writing. I was thinking the problem is being human being the animal side, and it's been a problem survival part, the fear, all these emotions driving behavioral things among us, which has big impacts on all of this. And I kept thinking that this is part of the problem, and calling it out, and saying we need to look at the other side, that we are not, we are, incarnate, yes, human, but there's a whole very spiritual side to us, and it's just so squashed. Is it a matter of balance as well?
Yes, it is balance. I mean, the spiritual side does not remove the human side or the biological side. It can't until it does. I mean, there's a point where the body falls away, and then we'll talk. Who knows? I mean, my sense of it at that point is the disembodied self is still one with all there is, one way or the other. But as long as you're embodied, as long as you are sitting here going through day-to-day life, you are going to experience stuff that's going to challenge you in profound ways, and you can't run from it, really, because where can you go? You can go to a very deep, hidden place. I know people who have done that, and you can really live in that place, but I will tell you, this thing doesn't free you from having the human biological experience finally encroach upon that place. It encroaches completely, because ultimately, I don't care how tiny and small and quiet and simple you've made yourself, it's still going to go like that. And you're going to feel it. You really are going to feel it. And I remember when I was a kid and I was living in an ashram and sleeping in a room with an old man who, we were just the two of us in that room. And one night I woke up with him touching me, and I looked at him and he said, pain, pain. He'd been meditating his whole life. He went, pain, so much pain. And he just wanted me to hold his hand or just rub his belly or his chest, really. Just help me. And I'm going, this is a life of spiritual sitting, and it ends up in pain. Nothing he could do about it. And I just thought, oh my God, how do I get beyond that? You don't get beyond that. There is no getting beyond that. One point or another, I don't care how profoundly successful you've been in your spiritual containment or container or whatever it is you think you've used to hide from pain, it comes in. It gets us. The thing that you want to be able to do is go, thy will be done. It's Christ on the cross being forsaken and then forgiving everyone. There's something in us that needs that shift, and it comes. That's the beauty of this. There is this human thing that reaches off into the ultimate, eternal, infinite space of our own being, and it floods back into us and raises us up, lifts us up into our true self, to the reality of ourself. But that's the end. That's the end. And look, there are maybe people around who are walking around in bodies with that truth surrounding them all the time. I believe there are. I believe there are days where I connect to the universe and I know my body is the least of it. My mind, my personality, all of that, whatever that stuff is like non-existent. And then there are days where it's like, oh, it's still this. I had a night like that last night. I have something called peripheral neuropathy. It's really painful in my foot. And it kept me up almost the entire night last night. And I did every dance I could do to try to dance with the pain of this thing. And nothing that we know, Tylenol and all that stuff doesn't work on it. So, and I've talked about this before, but the gift of this thing is how much it tells you you are human. That's why I'm making this talk today. Because, I think Buddha, in that poisoned food that he was eating, not literally poisoned, but that killed him, was not a particularly happy camper. I don't think he was. And I think all of us who go through human suffering have a right to be miserable. If you can arrive at a place of going, even this, which I think is a great achievement, that's wonderful. And I think years of spiritual work will help with that. But I do think we are biological, and I do think the day-to-day life is a blend between the spiritual and the human, and that we need to live that blend, and not to be lost completely in the material or to be lost in the immaterial. because that's where people get thrown, you know. I've talked probably so many times already in class about people I've met who have lived years in monastic lives who are so deep. They're so deep, but they can't come out. This one person who was here, and I tried to hug them, and they were they were terrified of being touched or hugged because that made them feel something that they weren't allowed or didn't feel they had a right to in their deep protective space. And I felt, well, this isn't healthy. This isn't, you can't just live hidden in that reality. You need to be the totality, the non-dual, the good and the bad, the in and the out, the up and the down. We are everything. And finding that everything is so important. And that's what we're really doing in our quote unquote spiritual search. We're trying to find how to expand into all that is rather than to live a life that is somehow protected from that. The protection is an illusion. There is no such thing. There's nowhere to go, you know, other than to know you are all there is. And at some point, I really know this internally. I believe it completely. When the moment comes, you will be, I use the word uplifted the way so many people describe upliftment. You will be lifted up into your totality. You will be lifted up into something so extraordinary and beautiful that has never not been there. And you can know that before, you can touch it before, you can witness it before, you may even live in it before. But until the body is finished, there's still you in it. And it's all deeply connected, singular in the end. But as long as you have this body, you got to deal with it. Judy.
Well, I was thinking of something, Rudy was in this ashram or something in India, and he was being treated very poorly, and he went to the head person who said, "Can you transcend it?" And he went, "Yes, I can." And so when you were talking, you didn't say the word transcend, but that's something I try to do when, like, my neighbor's trying to gouge fire victims, and I am offended. And I want to go, you know, I'm mad. And I go, "Can you transcend this?" And it's not rising above it. It's just, I'm automatically going, everything's one, and you are her. And then I have to say to myself, no one gets away with anything. So keep yourself in line. And don't worry about what other people are doing unless, you know, you have to report something or whatever. But can you, with everything you just said, does the word transcend
I did use it a few times, and yes, it does fit. But, you know, sometimes transcendence is a very smart reaction to a very difficult situation. You can separate from something, like you just expressed a lot of anger at this person, and righteous anger in the end. But who is living in that anger? Yeah.
Me.
So the toxic environment is your own toxicity. So you can look at that with some clarity and go, this woman is really, really doing something terrible. It's charging, because a lot of fire people who burned out of their houses here, you know, are being gouged in trying to find new housing. And that's a really, I mean, from a human perspective, a really terrible thing. That it gives us our anger is totally understandable. But if you are in a toxic state, then you haven't transcended it. You are locked in it. Transcending it is, in Rudy's terms, take a breath, relax. It doesn't change that what she's doing is wrong. It just clears the field for you to be able to live in a place of going, I see humanity for what it is. I see the world for what it is. This is not a completely beautiful reality. A lot of people behave badly. I, given the choice, would not do that. And you can find something in yourself that would, from your understanding of how much anger this brought up, you can start to free yourself of that anger and understand from a very compassionate place how the world can be, how it might be, and how perhaps at some point this woman will learn the lesson that she did something that was perhaps not the right thing to do. It's not for you to be the one that fixes that. Karma, the laws of karma, if you will, consequence, will play out. They do. They play out in a big way. So you don't have to be the one suffering her ignorance. I mean, I get it. I look at the world every day, of course, and like all of us, the world's very present for us now, and I see things that make me enraged on some level as a human being, because people are really behaving badly in ways, fundamental ways, affecting our social fabric, our culture, our whole world, really, our planet. This is big stuff. And there's a part of me that can rage at it, but then I would just be caught up in my own sort of stress and my own misery and all of that. So I look at it, and what I feel instead is this a profound sense of, so this is what is. This is how it works. This is the world we live in. This is the lesson, in a sense, of what egoism does, what egotism does, what it means to not care about your neighbor, what it's like to live a duplicitous life, what it's like to live a life of lie, really, where you say one thing and really live another thing. You look at this, and I do with my eyes wide open now, and I go, I never saw this before. I was not aware of how big this was. And a part of me is disturbed beyond belief, and another part of me is going, okay, now at least reality is revealing itself. I don't understand this reality. I'll tell you where I prefer. I love walking in the woods, walking around the trees. I love walking in nature. But a guy told me once, and he was a really important scientist, and he said to me, if you want to find real competition in the world, go to a forest. He said every one of those roots is fighting with the other trees for its roots, for its space. They're all fighting to get the canopy, to get the most sun and the most light. There is a war zone in the forest all the time. But we don't tend to see that. But because I know that, and because I see the people around me, I get a sense that we are in a world that is very dynamic, very powerful, very forceful, and there's a lot going on. And if I get caught up in my day-to-day feelings about that, then I am suffering. And the thing I can do that Rudy taught me, which was so simple, was take a breath, rise above your feelings, and just look at them. Just watch all this stuff that's happening. That is a spiritual gift. That is part of being human. You don't have to be in it. We were watching a movie last night, Blanche and I said, I can't do this. I cannot go on this journey. There's too much suffering and sadness and all. And I got up and walked out of the room. I can do that. I don't have to go there. I don't deny that what there exists. I don't pretend to think that this is a drama, a dream. To me, it's all part of an incredible reality. You may call it illusion if you want, but it's a reality of sorts. And we can define ourselves in transcendent terms as witnesses and observers who can feel and touch and experience this totality and communicate it through compassion to other people and help people through it, because everybody's suffering it. And that's where transcendence is helpful. You transcend your own toxicity, and then you can really be available to other people. But don't pretend you don't have that. Don't pretend you didn't get angry. Don't pretend you don't think what this woman is doing is terrible, because you do. You do. But feel it, experience it, take a breath, and then don't make it part of your environment. And that clears your world. And that's something we can all do. Anyone else? Okay. Blanche and I'll be gone for the next 3 weekends. That will include Christmas and New Year. So Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Hanukkah, everything else, all the happies. Enjoy. There will be class here on the next 3 Sundays. You guys, 1, 2, are you available? If not, we can talk after. Okay. And I thank you. I thank you all for being here. You guys for making the journey.
It's all a journey.
What?
It's all a journey.
Yeah, it's all. Well, that's very true. That's very true. It is all a journey, and I hope this isn't too confusing to people. But in the end, honestly, we're all looking we're all looking for a belief system that makes us happy in our particular beliefs. And if I'm not participating in your belief system, I'm pretty sure you'll stop watching these talks, which is fine with me. You know, I can only tell it as I'm seeing it, and if it doesn't fit cleanly, there are people who will make it perfect for you. Believe me, there's someone out there who will tell it to you the way you want it to be, and go for it. I totally get it. Anyway, I love you all, and I really do wish you a very happy holiday.